Teachers of Reddit, what was the worst thing you had to confiscate from a student? So this was less confiscated and more this student ended up just leaving this in my room, and we had to throw it away, but it was certainly weird and is among my favorite things. I have a student this year who has brought some interesting things in. He's in 7th grade, and this is usually beyond the age students play show and tell to begin with. Things included a Russian nesting doll of household items, lunchboxes, crayon bags, a plastic egg and many things in between. 8 or 9 total, leading to a paper with Joe Biden written on it, and a jar of other people's hair. He was asking his teachers to add to it. This somehow beats both. Over the course of what feels like a week, this student had been collecting cherry tomatoes at lunch and saving them. Eventually, he had a handful of them. He named each one. He drew a face of each. He had created a family of tomatoes. He even began dressing them in tape-created safety seats. Only the children tomatoes though. He even had a French fry boat for a vehicle to carry his tomato family to each class. Eventually he left it in our class over weekend, and the tomatoes went bad. We had to toss them. He asked us not to call TPS on him, Tomato Protective Services. I love this kid. Over the course of years, bottle of vodka hidden in the girls' bathroom by 7th graders. How did you know where to look? Everyone who came back from the bathroom was drunk, so you're not as sneaky as you think. Vape, my mom gave it to me for allergies. So I'll just give it back to her then. Wide eyes. No. Student banging the primers of 23006 shells together in class. Grab. I just wanted to see if they would go off. Napalm. Some kids were into petrol/gas sniffing, but found it hard to transport and keep hidden, so they learned how to make napalm, so they could carry it hidden in their bags. I had to lock down the whole school and get hazmat in to dispose of it. And how did they find out how to make it? They asked one of the science teachers and he told them. I got in trouble for looking up how to make napalm in HS freshman year. I actually got caught because a friend told me about the Anarchist Cook website. I went on it and checked the ingredients because ours wasn't potent enough/anticlimactic. Got caught by a substitute and was sent to the office where IT scoured who else went on that website. I didn't know what anarchist meant at the time. LOL. During my review, the chemistry teacher asked me what it said. I told him styrofoam and gasoline. Well, did it work? Chem tea, not really, was just jelly gasoline. That's because you need to double boil it to change the chemical composition more. But with the fumes and an open flame, you're asking for trouble. The best way is to use a bathtub with the water heater up really high, this way there is no flame. Gotta have IT block this website at school. Chem TI got a central detention and had him for chem the next year. Not necessarily the craziest thing to confiscate, but the effect that confiscating the item had on the student was pretty upsetting. For background, I am an elementary special education teacher for students with emotional disabilities and intense behaviors. These students have behaviors that range from yelling, throwing things, and leaving the classroom to students who have attempted suicide and students who have assaulted their peers or the school staff. I even had a student go for a cop's gun one time. The student in question was in 1st grade at the time and fairly low-key compared to some of the other kids I had. This student and I had a good relationship as I was one of the only male staff in the building. He lacked a reliable male figure in his life, and for the majority of his kindergarten year, I was the primary teacher working with him. One day my student had asked to use the restroom, and for most of my students, our staff will escort them to and from the restroom, so I went with him. Now it's been several years, so the details are fuzzy, but somehow it was brought to my attention that there was burnt toilet paper in the boys' restroom. I can't remember if my student or another student told me, but I want to say it was my own student. This sets off some alarms in my head, so I contact my admin team so they're aware. As we're going forward with our day, I notice that my student is fidgety and messing with something in their jacket pocket. So I ask them if I can check their pocket, and instead of saying yes, he pulls out a little Bic lighter and tells me that he found it and asks me to keep it a secret. Of course, I can't just turn a blind eye, so I report it to my admin team, and we sit down with the student to talk about fire safety. We explained how playing with lighters isn't safe, and that he could hurt himself or others if he accidentally started a fire that got out of control. My student feels awful. He's apologizing and feeling remorseful. He admits to us that he had been messing around with lighters at home when his mom was sleeping. We contacted his mother to tell her what had happened and what he had told us, and her response was unfortunate. She was furious with us. Told us there was no way that he had brought a lighter, and that it must have been planted by a peer. That we coerced a confession out of him, and that she was pulling him out of school immediately. Within a year, the family's house burned down, and my former student was severely burned in the fire. My mom has been a primary teacher for her whole life now, in the UK, and the worst incident she had to deal with was with a girl aged 10 who was having issues with a boy essentially bullying her. She told her dad, and her dad's solution was to give her a sawn-off shotgun to intimidate the boy. No one knew it was unloaded, but the hell it raised when a 10-year-old schoolgirl brings out a shotgun certainly put the boy off from ever coming near her again. Not a teacher, but I'm half deaf, and my music teacher took my hearing aid and refused to accept that it wasn't an earbud. Then he yelled at me for the rest of the class for not playing in tune. Couldn't exactly tell how well I was playing since I could hear it. My mom always told the story about my brother bringing a signed picture of Richard Petty to his class and telling everyone he was his dad, 1-2 ND grade maybe, but that everyone forgot because the next kid pulled out an antique gun. When I was in 5th grade, there was an active market in live bees. Some kids figured out that the weight of the average 5th grader briefly stepping on a bee in the grass would stun it for about a minute without actually killing it. They started going out in teams to scout bees on the field, stun them, and carefully scoop them into plastic sandwich bags. They'd then sell them to other students who'd release them in classrooms to waste class time and scare people. You could get honeybees for 25 cents apiece. Bumblebees and yellow jackets cost more. Teachers and school admins started cracking down on this. Teachers literally confiscated live bees in plastic bags from students when found, and they eventually had to start having someone watch the field to catch students in the act. Edit. A lot of people saying they had something similar, and where was this? This was East Bay Area, Northern California. If that sounds like you, it was the elementary school that had the same name as the nearby community swimming pool, and the custodian named Fred, whom everyone thought was the best. This was spring of '05, though it may have happened other years too. Not mine, but my fiancé's co-worker confiscated a makeshift shank from a 3rd grader, roughly 8 years old, made from a popsicle stick and a straw. He said he was going to use it on his animals at home. Best part was when they told the dad, he said, "Why did you give him supplies to make a shank? I assume he's gonna kill a few people in the future." Not a teacher, but I watched quite a funny confiscation while in detention as a sophomore in high school. I was reading a book just trying to make the time go by when our vice principal, who was monitoring detention that day, stepped out for a moment. All of a sudden I hear a cracking sound, and I look up from my book to see a broken egg on the floor. The few kids in the room look around at each other confused. Nobody owns up to it, and nobody knows who did it because we were all distracted when it happened. The vice principal returns, doesn't notice the egg. But he's so engrossed in his paperwork that this kid still gets away with throwing another egg. Everyone looks up. The VP asked what that noise was, and this kid holds up a broken pencil and apologizes. Everyone goes back to minding their business, but all the students now know who the culprit is. Finally, this kid throws one last egg, but unfortunately the VP looked up from his papers right as he threw it. He walked over to the kid's desk, asked him what he thought he was doing, and the kid goes, "Just cracking jokes." VP holds out his hand, and the kid reveals an entire carton of eggs from under his sweatshirt and hands it to him. VP looked so unfazed that I honestly wondered what else that man has seen. I was honestly glad I got detention that day. Thanks for watching. If you're eager to hear more wild stories, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to leave us a like. Also, let us know a crazy story from yourself in the comments section below. Also, feel free to check out other fun videos in our channel. See you soon.